win is our desire. Couple with a break, brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
We are DNVR. We are live from Studio A, and the A stands for a guest. We've got a guest on today, Tim Jenkins.
That's kind of weak. I gotta say boo.
Would you prefer like the A stands for awesome game plan?
Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about.
The A stands for absolute domination
There
of
we
the
go.
Giants. All right. Sorry, I didn't take too much time to think about that. We do have Tim Jenkins on, former NFL quarterback Tim Jenkins, and of course the head of awesome YouTube channel All Things QB. Does a great job over there. That was right?
Yeah,
I don't know why I'm always afraid I'm going to mess that up. But Tim yesterday was very, very passionate about the game plan created by Pat Shurmur for Teddy Bridgewater in this game. So I want to get to that in a second. But first, I want to tell you that we are presented by MSU Denver Online. msudenver.edu/online is where you can find it. Someone commented, where can I go to college online? It's funny you should ask.
Tell us about
msudenver.edu/online is the place to go. Everyone needs to know. So there you go.
People know.
Yeah, the people know now. Check them out. 750 total classes, 45 plus online and hybrid programs. And MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as students attending any other Colorado institution. So, RK, Zac, and of course Tim Jenkins. Tim, you were chomping at the bit to tell the people about this. He says, anyone bring me on, I got to talk about this.
I was very pumped up. I was having a little bit of fun on Twitter. I'm a big Twitter guy. So, no, it was just, I think a lot of people last year, and I don't want to say unfairly because I criticized him too, but I think a lot of people were taking shots at Pat Shurmur last year. Like the whole season.
Yeah.
I mean, I did too. Right? I feel like every video I got on, I was like, the last time I saw this concept was at a youth game 2 weeks ago. Right? Like it wasn't great. It wasn't great. But I think
did he graduate to high school level?
Yeah, I think he graduated a little bit. But I think you saw what a full off season gives a coach in the NFL, right? Because when you're I could only imagine his thought process when he's thrown into a COVID year where, hey, I don't have OTAs, we have limited meeting, we can't film and then talk about it after. And then, oh, by the way, I have a guy who's like kind of a rookie quarterback, right, in Drew Lock. So I think that's probably why he simplified it. What he did with Teddy yesterday was unreal. And the Giants, I think, on defense have a lot of concerns because people can really dictate to them what they do. Like if you get into 12 personnel, like the one back, two tight end stuff, or 21 where it's two backs and one tight end, you basically get them into an auto bear check, which is where they have 5 guys at the line of scrimmage, and then you have to rotate to a single high coverage. So you're only going to get cover 1 and only cover 3. And they basically dictated that coverage a ton and then gashed them. Like even the KJ Hamler drop touchdown, what was it out of? It was out of 12, play action, KJ just runs by everybody. So I think the way they crafted it was perfect. And honestly, all you had to do was watch the New England Patriots-Giants game of the preseason to realize, like, Josh McDaniels did it to him in a preseason game, get him to those auto checks. So if all of a sudden you can see that in a preseason game, you can guarantee you get it week 1. And I thought it was super impressive what Shurmur did.
Well, and one of the things that I was most impressed with, especially going back, is the Giants said, we're not going to let you run the ball, at least initially. Yeah. And they were pretty stout. In the first half, Broncos ran for, I think, 2.6 yards per carry. Yet they still got a good game plan out there. And they really kind of strayed away from, we're a run-first team. And they went, I think, 20 pass attempts to only 10 rushing attempts. Is this something that could be sustainable, where Teddy is throwing the ball significantly more than running the ball if other teams take this approach?
Yeah, I mean, transparently, I think that we are 4 weeks away from being a 1st and 10 pass team. I mean, if you think about the drive where you really saw them start to move the ball, what'd they do? They threw it on first down. It was just traditional drop back. They would throw like stick, right, which is just, hey, 5 yards outside turn against zone. And then Teddy just completed and they move on. If you get – I really think with Teddy, part of what you're opting for is an offense that stays on schedule. And if part of staying on schedule is throwing and completing quick game, and if you feel like, hey, we can do it, I'm not going to be surprised to see the Broncos' identity shift from a 1st and 10 run play to kind of those – you know how you always hear about teams talk about the extended run game where we're throwing screens or we're throwing quick game?
Yep.
If the Broncos transition to that, I really think they could have a super effective offense. And then let's be honest, you don't have to run the ball effectively to do good play action and run action in the NFL. Right? Like
Sean
that's
McVay has been proving that for years.
Yeah, look at the Rams last night, right?
Yes.
How many shot plays did they hit last night? And then really their run game was pretty dog until the second half.
Yep.
So I think also you're going to run the ball because you do want to see if, hey, we can gash them like they did at the end of the game.
Right.
But I really think, I mean, with the way Teddy played, I don't know how I could be sitting here as an offensive coordinator on Monday and not think to myself, you know what, we're going to put a lot more in, we call them P and 10, right? Possession and 10, your first and 10. I'm going to put in a lot more P and 10 quick game and just live with what Teddy makes a decision as. That's what I would be thinking if I was Shurmur.
And I think the exact thing you're talking about there is why yesterday when I was watching the game, it became really obvious to me why they went with Teddy. What I loved the most and kind of what goes into what you're talking about is he makes the easy stuff look easy.
Yep.
And so when you get a 3rd and 4 and you've got Noah Fant isolated in single coverage and you just know, okay, well, we've got a quick little slant here, I just got to put it on him and we've got this. He does that really easily. He's hitting the short crossers and the drags and stuff like that and just getting those playmakers out in space. And it totally does allow you to dream of, okay, maybe they do spread him out 5 wide and just let him pick matchups. Sort of like what you're talking about, like McDaniels did with Mac Jones a lot in the preseason. Just, hey, who do you like? Because unfortunately they're not going to have Judy for a little while. But no matter who you're putting out there, whether it's Cortland, Tim, KJ, Albert O, Noah Fant, like you're gonna have matchups that you like. And Teddy did a really good job yesterday of finding the one that he liked and taking advantage of it.
People take for granted, too, how much personnel can make it easier. So, I mean, do you guys remember the Dallas Cowboys, right? When they were on their own 1-yard line to start the season, they throw fade that's wide open.
Yep.
They were in 12 personnel, but they just lined up their back wide to the right, their 2 tight ends to the right, and they put both receivers to the left. They forced, I think Tampa got into 44 personnel, 4 down and 4 linebackers. Like, how do you cover Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb when you have those guys on the field? Yeah. Like, you can't. So you can dictate all those kind of matchups that you're talking about out of 12 personnel because obviously until Judy gets back, maybe you lean more towards 12 and, depending on what you like with Tim Patrick. But I do think you can still spread it out and get into empty out of that base personnel, and you probably force the D coordinator's hand, and it probably makes it a heck of a lot harder to cover that versus when you are in like 10 personnel.
Well, and one of the things that Vic said today, what he was impressed with Teddy, was his efficiency, which I think is exactly what you were talking about, his calmness, and then he said his ability to make plays under duress with improvising, and that was something that I think surprised a lot of people. I think taking a couple deep shots surprised a lot of people, and then also his ability to, people were calling him Teddy Mahomes with just his ability to run back there. And
anything else? Can we do like Teddy Cunningham or like Teddy Vick?
You want to start at the top?
No, let's go somewhere else. Teddy Elway, anything but that one.
And is that something that surprised you? Because you mentioned it last time you were on. You watched every single snap of his last year.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. I don't think anyone was sitting there like, hey, when the pocket breaks down, I feel great having Teddy back there, right? Like, I don't think anyone was saying that. I mean, listen, the one where he stiff-armed the dude and then throws it back, I guarantee if you got Teddy off camera and just asked him, hey, what happened there? He'd be like, I don't know. I stiff-armed. Those are the things when you're in a quarterback room, you watch that play and you're like, dude, you just stiff-armed somebody. Everybody starts laughing.
Yeah.
Right? But like he was great. He reacted. When he felt pressure, he navigated the pocket well. And then we call it evacuating the pocket, right? Fire drilling. When he had to, he did, and he was effective with it. So I think his improv was impressive. I mean, listen, to me, the play that he graded out the worst on, there was the corner that was open for a touchdown, but the play in the pocket he graded out the worst on was that first 3rd and down where he threw the go ball, and the shallow's wide open underneath, and that play you read shallow to deep Hank. But listen, he's like, I mean, of all the things for Teddy to blow, would it have been, hey, I think he should have thrown the shallow, but he threw the go? I think people will live with that, right? Because that means he's being aggressive with the football. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of good to take away from that game. Unfortunately, everyone's going to preface it with, but it was the New York Giants, but it doesn't matter.
But I was saying last night, like, the New York Giants are not a bad defense.
Yeah.
That was the one thing that they were going to hope they were going to be able to hang their hat on this year. Now, if the Broncos are putting up 27, should have been more, well, then maybe they're not as good as I think a lot of people might have thought. But that is not a bad defense. I think it probably by the end of the season is a middle of the pack defense.
I think schematically the Broncos are a nightmare for him too.
Yeah.
Because I think schematically they're built to go against like 11 personnel. And just the way, I don't know why they do it. Like, listen, they did a third down coverage. It was maybe the dumbest coverage I've ever seen since I watched, like...
Did you see Florida State run cover 1?
Okay, yeah, so outside of Florida State. But it's also why college doesn't give you the all-22, because they were like, no, we were in 2-man. It's like, no, you weren't. But like, New York, they were sitting back. It was supposed to be cover 1 hole, and their safety's at, like, 14. And that's when they hit the one you were talking about, Fant, on the, like, the shallow route. I mean, that's just... I don't know what they were doing. I do think that defense is going to end up being better than what they were, because I think it takes them a couple weeks to get to that exotic stuff where they have, one down lineman and everybody else walking around. So I think the Broncos lucked out from that perspective getting them early. But I just think the Broncos are going to be – it's going to be tough to defend. Like, how do you defend 2 tight ends when you have Fant, who really plays like a receiver? Like, it's going to be hard to actually game plan for these guys. And I think – when you also look at the division and how much single high coverage you get in the division, I don't know. I just think it's going to be really hard to cover. And then KJ Hamler, nobody thinks he's going to drop that again, right? And I think he showed you what is so rare about him, which is the ability to just run by people in the NFL. So I think there's a lot of stuff that on tape should just excite Broncos fans.
Well, and then another reason why you shouldn't apologize for destroying the Giants is because next week you play the Jags, who are also bad, and the week after you play the Jets, and that gives you a huge cushion to when you start entering those AFC West games and you're playing the Chiefs and the Chargers. You can drop one of those and be okay. I mean, we're not talking about the Broncos competing for that number 1 seed, so it's okay to you're going to drop a few, but looking to those games where you said that's what the teams will throw that at the Broncos, how do they combat that?
Yeah, I mean, well, we want them to. I would say if I'm the OC of the Denver Broncos, I want people in single high, because the more single high I get, the more I have KJ running by people. I have Jerry Jeudy sitting on like that, we call it XZ read, but where he gets to like 16 and sits, and they hit it off a play action. So they hit one yesterday. The more, I mean, you can run Dover, unfortunately the play that Jerry got hurt on. But there's a lot of stuff that this Broncos offense is built to attack single high. Lucky for them in the division, that's kind of one of the primary coverages that we'll see. Vegas will give you a little bit more too. But with the way Jonathan Abrams played, like, it's not really two, because that dude, he wants to get in the box and hit somebody. So it's like kind of a hybrid. But I mean, I think after watching yesterday, what I took away was if the Broncos are that effective on offense, where they can hold the ball for that long, like, you go, to me, and again, I don't want to overreact to just one game, but you go from thinking, wow, we probably lose 2 to the Chiefs, to you probably split with the Chiefs if you can really play that brand of football. Because if you can keep the ball away from them for that long and get at, so imagine, hey, boom, we shrunk it to where now you only have 6 possessions, Patrick Mahomes. And then, oh, by the way, Von Miller got you on 1 possession, right, where he gets after you, and then you're just in 2nd and 25, and you can't do anything from that point as an offense. You start to figure out, okay, well, maybe we're 1 turnover away from, like, you steal one of those games. And to me, I think that was the most exciting thing, was to see how, I mean, they just controlled the ball for basically the entire game, it felt like.
For me, I think the most exciting thing was those 3rd down plays where Teddy was able to make a play. And it's one of these silly things that when you're just projecting all offseason, you do get buried into narratives of, okay, well, Teddy doesn't make plays with his feet, and, he's not able to stretch the field. And then you watch a game and you're like, oh, okay, actually, yeah, he can.
Yeah.
And something to add on top of that is, I said it all throughout training camp, Teddy had more success throwing deep than Drew did all throughout training camp.
And you saw him get out of the pocket and still make the right decision. I have some people, when I mentioned today, saying, well, he's throwing across his body. But when you watch that, when you see that back angle, the I don't know who it was, safety or corner, who comes over and, hits KJ late, he didn't have a chance to intercept that ball.
Yeah. And you know what I love what Teddy said after the game about that? He said, that's a play that I'm going to tell high schoolers not to do. So it's not like he's like, oh, look, I can do this now. I'm going to start throwing across my body all the time. No, he knows he can only do it when that safety is so far away.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's the buzzword we were using for Drew Lock all offseason, calculated gunslinger. I think that's what you saw Teddy do yesterday. He's making plays outside of the pocket, and you do need that stuff from a quarterback in the NFL. You just have to be able to say, hey, 3rd down and 5, the play didn't work, reads 1 and 2 aren't there, you've got pressure in your face, how can you get us a 1st down? Really impressed with him doing that. Tim, I want to get into a little bit more of just like the X's and O's of the game plan yesterday. What were the certain things that you saw them do that you were so impressed with from Pat Shurmur?
Yeah, I think so. You saw like the spin-offs of plays that he'd been doing in the preseason. So, everybody remembers the Minnesota touchdown to KJ Hamler, right? and it's like so nuanced, but instead of starting in base, they kicked him down in his alignment, which then forced that corner a little further off. And so the run by that should have been a touchdown. Like those are the little things that to a defense, they look like drastically different plays.
Right.
But to us, it's, hey, we're just calling XZ read out of a different formation. And that's why you can get those kind of run bys. That kind of stuff, forcing them into bear with the single high because of the personnel, that was like next level stuff to me. And then also the way that so the touchdown that I think he missed on the boot, they condensed Tim Patrick, which again then gets that corner to influence a little further tighter to like the kind of flat route that they have going. And that's just a pop touchdown. So I think there's a lot of stuff that Shurmur did to where, like, for me, I'm sitting there, I'm like, this guy is, he's like taking it to the next step that last year we just didn't see. Last year we just saw so much of like, hey, we have these 8 plays installed for this team, and we can only regurgitate these 4 because that's, I mean, honestly, it's probably what he felt like Drew could do.
And that's what I was
to where
gonna say.
now it's like, hey, we saw 8 different looks, and you guaranteed all 8 of those were designed for the Giants, especially with the third down stuff where they were running stick and all this condensed bunch stuff that they didn't get to last year. Because anytime you condense the formation, you make the read harder on the quarterback. But if you have a guy who you're confident can read it out, like it's really effective on third down. I think you saw that with what Teddy was doing, and you saw all the conversions.
One of the things that Teddy did yesterday that was so impressive that I think probably opens up a lot for Pat Shurmur is he completed a pass to 9 different guys. How much does that allow Pat Shurmur to continue to adapt this offense and maybe do more that he wasn't able to last year?
I mean, I think it also goes to show just how many weapons the Broncos offense has. I think that's what people take for granted is like you have to really script touches for people, and I'm guessing that's how they got to 9 different receivers because they're like, okay, listen, hey, we're going to run bunch Hawkeye, and we think we're going to hit fan on this, and then we're going to get into empty, and we're going to, ISO Judy here, and that's where we'll get him the ball. Because I think it's going to open it up from what they can do formationally for Shurmur. Because now if you're saying, okay, hey, man, we're going to get into 12, and we have these 3 formations, but then we're going to get into 10, and we have these, 4 formations. Now all of a sudden a defense has to prep for 25 formations, right? And for you keep it simple for your guys because you're saying, hey, when we're in 11, this is all we're getting into, or when we're in 12, this is all we're getting into. So for you internally, it's not complex, but for the guys prepping for you, like it looks like a nightmare. That's what the Rams do to people that people don't take. Like people think McVay's innovative from his concepts, and he is, right? But concepts are consistent throughout the NFL. What McVay's really innovative at is his formations. The way he formationally gets Cooper Kupp onto a linebacker. Like if you were to sit here and say, hey, we're going to game plan for the Rams, and we're out in nickel, do we want Cooper Kupp on a linebacker? The answer is no.
Hell no.
But somehow they get that because formationally they know, hey, when we motion across, we know you don't run with him.
Right.
So those are the things that I think Pat Shurmur is going to be able to do. And to me, KJ Hamler is the guy that yesterday I wanted to see like a little bit more scripted for. That I think will, especially with Judy going down, that we'll see. But I do think that's where I think it really opens up for Shurmur is the ability to go take the roof off. And I think people probably, like, listen, I know that he was probably completing deep stuff in practice, but I do think yesterday probably made the coaches feel better about Teddy going down the field. Because everyone still has hesitations on certain guys with certain things. Yesterday, I think, was kind of the green light of, yeah, you know what, he is going to drive the ball down the field, and we have a guy that can do it.
So you talk about KJ. Were you surprised that he only played in 37% of the offensive snaps, while Tim Patrick's at 70, Cortland's at 80, even with Cortland coming off the injury, and even with when Jerry got injured in the third, it still didn't, I mean, I expected to see KJ there 50% of the time or more.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to, I'm the biggest KJ Hamler fan. Sorry. I sit there and talk to our staff. I'm like all day, hey, I think KJ Hamler's like the best slot receiver in the NFL. I think what he gives you from the vertical presence is like so underrated because there's just like the closest guy is in our division in Tyreek Hill. The ability to take the roof off against no matter the coverage is something that you don't get in the NFL. So yeah, you telling me that right now that he played 37% of snaps is like shocking to me. I would be willing to bet that it has a lot to do with the fact that Shurmur knew if I get into this personnel grouping, being 12 and 21, I can force them into a single high coverage. And then when he was sitting there going 12, okay, if I'm in 12, do I really want to take Jerry or Cortland off the field? The answer is no.
Right.
So as much as like I love KJ Hamler, I wouldn't put him in over Cortland or Jerry. the conversation now is going to become, okay, what do you do? It's going to be week to week. I bet you there's going to be weeks where KJ plays 80% of the snaps, but they're also in 11 more.
It.
You know what I mean? And then I also think there's going to be weeks where, he probably is in the 30s or 40s. But listen, if he would have caught that deep ball, right, does it matter? Hey, he played 40% of snaps, but he ended with, 100 yards if he catches that deep ball. And I think that's what they're going to use him for, is those home runs. But I do think, man, it's like I think KJ's a guy that I want to see his production increase, but I think we will throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, and if he catches that deep ball, the whole timeline is different for the whole game.
Yeah.
Because obviously the injury to Jerry happens shortly after that. I want to get an update from you on that, Zach. Quickly, talking about KJ Hamler, I think there is so much more that you can unlock for him that I think, they almost have a glorified second preseason here, not to disparage their opponents coming up that much.
It's definitely disparaging them, though.
Well, it is. And they're bad, so I'm going to. Basically what I'm saying here is, okay, you had this preseason. You never show anything in the preseason. No one wants to show anything. Then you come out in week 1, you want to show a little bit. Then you're going to play the Jags next week. You get to unveil a little bit more. And then you get to play the Jets. You get to unveil a little bit more. But you still almost don't have to show everything yet. Then you go into Baltimore, and then you have Pittsburgh at home. And I just think you can open up the playbook more and more and more. They're obviously going to have to write in more stuff for KJ Hamler now with Jerry out. And I'm just, you go back and look at his college tape. One thing that I haven't seen them do, and maybe they just haven't hit this yet, is like the slot fade. He was incredible running fades out of the slot. End around, pop pass, all that kind of stuff I think can be really, really dangerous with him out there. And I think we're slowly going to see them, especially, so long as he stays healthy, touch wood, just build on the KJ Hamler package more and more and more.
And to your point, Tim, he was only in there 37%. He had the 4th most targets on the team. He had 3 catches, 41 yards. We all know what that one incompletion was. And like you said, if he catches that, then we're talking about a 100-yard game where he just maximizes everything. And just one of the things that I like about KJ really quick is he doesn't just have that deep threat. He's pretty good possession guy too, especially if he can move on from the drops, which he had drops in college. He had drops last year, but so far, especially in training camp, I've really seen him really improve his ability to catch. And that's something where that's the aspect that I think you can say that gets him 70-80% of playing time, especially with Jerry Jeudy out.
Yeah, I think in terms of the drops, I don't think that drop, like, specifically to me, like, I think if you were to ask Teddy, I don't know if he got asked this today, like, he would feel like that drop, he would, as a quarterback, you feel like that drop's on me because I undershot it a little bit, right? Like, you want it to be, hey, because he's wide open, slow down, but still catch it, like, in stride, not slow down and turn around and catch it as he's backpedaling. So I think if you were to ask Teddy, and Teddy's just a great guy, so he'd say, yeah, it's on me, but I think
his
if you were
hands,
to really...
all he had to do was just turn him over. And
then he also, I mean, he had the guy running. Like, I think there were some things that went into that. That, to me, is different than, like, hey, a curl where you're running right back at the quarterback and you drop it, right? Those are two different drops. But I do think I don't want to make him seem like you're saying. He is a possession guy, too. He's a great route runner. I don't want to make it seem like he can only take the roof off. But when you watch a kid and he has, like, an ultra rare trait, you just start to, like, craft things towards that. And I think that's why you see him. He's our primary deep over runner, the guy that kind of gets all the way across the field on certain plays. And there's just stuff that they're going to craft for him. I wouldn't be surprised if they got into more 11 this week, if they're going to put Patrick outside and then put KJ in the slot and then have just Fant as the single tight end, especially against Jacksonville, which I'm assuming struggled against 11 if they struggled with the Texans. So that I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But I do think KJ, you can line him up outside. I just think if you were to face a cover 2 team, and it's always a knock on the smaller receivers, is to get off that boundary press corner when they don't have to worry about you deep, right? Because they have the cover 2 guy over the top. So that's always the knock on the smaller guys, is can you still get off the boundary press when that guy doesn't really have to worry about running with you because he's just going to press and then get to the flat. So I think that's the only concern with him. But, I mean, he probably could do that, right? And if you line him up off the ball, you can do different things with him to help him.
And that deep over is another. I mean, that's the Kansas City Chiefs' bread and butter. They do that with Tyreek all day long. I think it was, I don't know, I was watching a game that Tony Romo was calling, and he was like, if I was calling the defense, I might even go have like a man responsibility for the safety on the opposite side of the field, just saying, like, if you see him start coming, he's yours.
The deep overs changed the NFL. The deep over is what they scored on, right? Like, everyone's like getting after Surtain, and it's like it's not possible. There's no one on planet Earth like we need the
like
way
Chris Harris Jr.
It's really similar to the route that Tyreek beat Chris on.
Yep.
Like there's really no one on planet Earth that can cover that. Like we talk about like lockdown corners and what we used to have with like Champ and those kind of guys. No one was running from one side of the field to the other number and catching the ball. So it was like, you locked him down, but all you covered was post and hitch and 9-stop. That's all the NFL was back in the day, because you couldn't run over the deep middle because your guy was going to die. Like Brady talked about it, right? Now you can run all the way across the field, because guess what? If they barely even touch him, like the Teddy thing was the best roughing whatever, unnecessary roughness ever, because the dude's helmet's loose.
Yeah.
He laughed. He was laying on the ground smiling because he knew that his helmet fell off and it barely got touched, right? But you'll take it where you can get it.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like the NFL has changed so much, and we're going to, like, it's like Surtain. You would have loved to see him wrap up, but that's not on him, right? That's on the backer trying to peel all the way underneath. But again, good luck. So I'm a linebacker, and I'm supposed to run and then turn around and run 22 yards back to these numbers.
Yep.
Like, it's just an impossible play to cover. And that's the point where if you're talking about the Broncos defense and that touchdown that they gave up, you are getting dog cussed as a pass rusher, because that's your job. Your job is to take away deep over by getting after the passer and getting him off his spot. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But yeah, I just think like KJ Hamler is the guy that can run deep over, much similar to Tyreek Hill. But there's so many deep over runners now in the NFL, because formationally you're getting tighter and tighter in these formations so that you can cross. But it really is an impossible play to cover. We'll see a new coverage emerge. Like, we've had cover 2, cover 4, cover 3 for like since the invention of football. You'll see a new coverage emerge where you're going to start to see these will linebackers have to carry, and they'll leave a flat to the field. That'll eventually be the D coordinator's answers to all these deep over plays.
I mean, anyone who plays Madden knows this stuff, right? Like that's what you get beat on, because doesn't matter if you cover 3, cover 4, whatever you want. Those guys are getting pulled off, and there's just so much room coming over the middle of that field. It's genius. You know, it's great that they run it. All right, I do want to get into some updates on Jerry Jeudy and all that stuff that Zac got from practice today. But first, a shout out to DraftKings Sportsbook, where I more than paid my rent this weekend.
Yay.
I had the best betting weekend of my life. Now, as I said on the bet show, if you go into it thinking that's how you're going to pay your rent, you're going to have a bad time. But if you go into it thinking, hey, Monday Night Football tonight, I guess I'll have a rooting interest now because I have, Ravens -4. Then you're going to have a lot of fun. So head over to DraftKings Sportsbook. And right now, when you bet $1 on any football game, they're going to give you $200 in free bets paid out in 8 $25 free bets.
The best way to go.
Best way to go, because you can bet on a bunch of different things. You can do some crazy parlays like I happened to hit this weekend. You can, play it safe and just start racking up some free money. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it, and you can experiment with all of them over at DraftKings Sportsbook. You can also get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000 when you use the code DNVR, so check that out. Of course, you must be 21 or older, Colorado only. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match. Each up to $500. A deposit bonus requires a 25x playthrough, and restrictions to apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
If you want a sustainable way to pay your rent, though, why don't you get a job at Ball?
Much better idea. Much better idea.
That will also allow you to have some money to then go make more money over at DraftKings Sportsbook. And they're hiring to their 4-person plant, here in town at Golden, because the demand for sustainable aluminum cans has never been greater. Can you guess how many cans Ball made last year, Tim?
I had no idea. I'm not in aluminum foil or whatever cans.
Cool, yeah, pretty much. 101 billion cans. That's how many they made last year. It's
with
a
just
lot.
4? With just a 4-man plant?
400.
Oh, I thought you said 4-man plant. I'm like,
they're really
101
expanding to 5. Maybe they want to make it 500. Maybe they want to make it 100 million. Who knows? But they want to hire you. And here's how you get a job. Go to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden, or text Golden to 77222 to work at a great place. They treat their employees exceptionally, and they want to hire you so that you can pay your rent.
Absolutely. Get that rent paid. And then when you have a little bit left over, become a member at DNVR. There's so many perks of being a member. Go over to thednvr.com/subscribe to check out everything. And one of the great things is you get member-sized beers here at the DNVR bar. Maybe we'll go get one after we're done here.
Member beer.
little 6 ounces bigger than the average person's beer for the same exact price. So that's just one of the benefits. Additionally, you get deals on our merch every week, all sorts of stuff, and you can read all of our content over at the DNVR.com. And speaking of content over there, Zac, you've got a piece up right now with some injury updates. I would say pretty encouraging.
Yeah, well, pretty encouraging from the Jerry Jeudy front.
Yes.
And another weird one, which we'll get to in a second. But, guys, Jerry Jeudy, I mean, it looked like he was out for the season yesterday when we saw that. Good thing is he's not human, so he didn't break anything. That high ankle sprain was confirmed this morning in the MRI. And, guys, he's expected to be out 4 to 6 weeks.
That sounds familiar.
Maybe what you guessed last night, Dr. Ryan.
See, Tim, I got to let you in on this because I originally said I think 4 to 6. Zac said I think 6 to 8. And then Mace came on and said 6 to 8. And then Mace is like usually right about everything. So we were just like, okay, I guess it's 6 to 8. I was like, Dr. Zac, you were right. But then it comes out today from Shefty.
4 to 6.
4 to 6. So
Dr. RK.
it's Dr. RK.
How about that? And, guys, good news. That means
Yes.
he's back before the bye.
That's wild. I mean, I thought he broke his ankle.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I was watching that live, I was like, that sucks.
Yep.
The way Vic looked, too, because when they overturned the fumble to give the Broncos the ball back, Vic still looked depressed.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee he was thinking, Jeudy, we can't lose him.
Yeah.
I guarantee that's what he thought.
I mean,
That
we
was
were all
insanity.
thinking. Yeah, and he goes off on the cart. That's never good. Slightly better than when for him than when Garrett Bowles went off a cart, even though he wasn't hurt at all. But high ankle sprain. And for, like I said yesterday, for a guy who has superhuman ankle flexibility, maybe that came into account here. Like his ankle is able to withstand more than the average person's ankle. So maybe dodged a bullet here. I am worried to see what he looks like when he does come back. Can he still make those uber quick cuts? Can he still really trust planting as hard as he can on that foot? We can only hope so. But the Broncos will definitely be happy if even if it's on the back end of that 6 weeks from now. You feel really, really good about being able to get him back and not lose him for the whole season.
To be fair, you can scheme it, too. So it's left ankle. So you can put him on the right side of the ball a bunch to where you have him, jabbing off his outside foot more often than not when you're the outside receiver. So all the curls, comebacks, Harveys, all that kind of stuff, you can still get him involved in the offense. You're just going to see him formationally. Like, a lot of that's what's coaching, right? Hey, throughout the season, guys are going to get hurt, and how can we make them the most effective when they're, 80% of who they are? And I think that's what you'll see, is you'll see him whenever he's going to in-cut, he's going to play on the right side of the ball. Whenever he's going to out-cut, he's going to play on the left side of the ball, and you'll see that for probably the first 4 weeks that he's back. And then from there, hopefully he's good to go.
Do defenders know this, though, or are they cognitive of that when they're lined up against him out there?
Have you seen how many of those guys wear the cowboy collar still and run full speed and put their head down? They're not cognitive of anything. I'm obviously a very biased offensive player, but no, I mean, like, they'll pick up on some of that stuff, but you're one double move away from...
Right.
You're like, hey, Jerry, here's some Toradol. Let's go ahead and have you running out and up on this one play. Right? Like, it's not like the NFL is,
We're really peeling back the covers on what it's like to be in the offensive guy.
I forgot. So, my wife's sister is a PT, and she's like, hey, how many, shots have you gotten in your life? I was like, well, I got 9 last year. She's like, you're supposed to have 2 in your whole life. It's like, good to know. But yeah, I forget, you just joke around about Toradol, and everyone else I've never had that.
Yeah.
But no, he'll be fine. But you can formationally do stuff to make him more effective, and then you just have to hit one off to make sure I mean, you'll see it all the time though in the NFL, like when guys break ribs, right? When you see running backs with hey, why did Minnesota run zone to the right side every single time? Well, Delvin Cook broke his right rib, so if you run him to the right side, his left side's the only one exposed. There's a lot of stuff in the NFL that happens throughout the course of a season where guys are just trying to protect their players, but hey, certain guys at 80% are still better than a majority of people on planet Earth, so you get them out there.
Well, and so one of the reasons this is obviously very bad, Jerry Jeudy, in my opinion, is clearly the Broncos' best receiver, but they do have the luxury of having great depth there. Do you go all the way to protect him? And he's supposed to be back week 6 to week 8. You got the bye week in week 11. If he's 80% week 7, week 8, do you put him out there and do these things to protect him, but you also know you're slowing his progress when he's out there? Or do you say, maybe it depends on where the team is,
what I was
you know
gonna say.
what, we're going to hold you back 2 or 3 weeks, let you have the bye, and then we'll bring you back as close as you're going to be 100% for this season in week 12. So, I mean, we're talking now about missing half the season.
Yeah. I feel like Tim will probably agree. It really depends on where the team is and who you're about to play.
Who's week 6? Or who is 6 weeks out?
Week 6, so his first week game back could be week 6 against the Raiders.
And who's after that?
Then you have Cleveland on the road Thursday night. So that's something you may also want to consider. Is it worth bringing him back for two games in 5 days?
Who's after
How about
that?
this? Bring him back for Cleveland. Then he has extra time to recover that ankle between Cleveland and that next Sunday.
Or what if you just keep him out for Cleveland, though, and then he has 2 full weeks in between that and the Washington football team at home?
I think you run him out there against Cleveland, and he gets to kind of test it. And if it's really, if it doesn't feel good early, okay, well, you get him out of there. He's got plenty of time to rest and recover before the next game. That's my first thought on it.
That's fair.
But it also depends on where the Broncos are. If they're, there's a couple different ways of thinking about this. If they're 5-0 going into week 6, do you say, okay, well, we don't need him? Or do you say, like, hey, let's press, let's really go get this? And the converse of that is if they're really struggling, well, then no. You have to protect him because he's part of your future plans.
Well, tell me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I say if they're 5-0, absolutely do not bring him back. Not because you don't need him, but you're going to need him more in January and deep in January than you will against Cleveland on a Thursday night. That's a real tough game that you could drop with or without Jerry.
Yeah.
I just think, like, I think they're just good on offense. Like, I think you need Jerry Jeudy. I'm not saying, like, hey, Jerry Judy's, like, an interchangeable part, but I just, like, he moves the needle, but how much?
Yeah.
Like, if you think about what he got hurt on, like, deep over, we can run that without him.
Right.
Like, if you think about what he caught, XZ Reed, well, KJ and Tim Patrick actually might even be better than Cortland at that. If you think about the Blaze 8 that he caught, like, Cortland Sutton caught that in preseason game 3. So there's a lot of stuff that I think having Jerry is nice because he runs all of those. Mm-hmm. Now, as a coordinator, it's just my job to say, okay, Cortland does these 2 routes really good, the same way Jerry does. Okay, now Tim Patrick does this route. Now KJ does these 2, and now let me piece all 3 of them together to get us through this. But I honestly think, like...
So you're saying don't rush.
I wouldn't rush him.
I think I heard you say trade him.
No, I also don't think, like, I don't hear. There was no one on that schedule to me that's like, oh gosh, we really need to be in 10 personnel against them.
Right.
Yeah, like, I think the Raiders, you're going to sit in 12 again because if they're in too high, you're just going to run the ball. And then I think when you go play Cleveland, like, I mean, I don't think you're going to get out of 11. And then who was after that?
After Cleveland, Washington.
Yeah. Like, I think, like, if you're talking, like, Kansas City's going to do some stuff to them. LA is going to be the one who's going to be really innovative on defense that you're going to want all your people for. Because I think that's going to be a game changer.
How about this? The 2 LA games and the 2 Kansas City Chief games are after the bye.
Yeah.
So hold him out all the way, huh?
I don't think hold him out all the way. I just think make sure he's not going to get back to 100%. Make sure he gets to whatever he's going to be at. And then put him out there.
If you did, he would miss 9 games. And with the high ankle sprain, personally right now, I think it's going to be closer to the 6 than the 4 weeks.
Well, you said 6 to 8, so that's why you're
Well, here's my prediction. If he misses 6 games, all 6 games, he still hits his over on receptions at DraftKings Sportsbook.
Ooh, it's
which was
65.5?
How
many did he have yesterday?
7.
Oh, wow.
So he was on pace for a 10 catch game.
Yeah, he was on pace for a 10-catch game. He was going to be 1/6 of the way there with 16 games remaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget about this stuff. There's people that are rooting hard for him coming back right away.
Yes, they are.
The season-long props, that's tough.
The season-long props are always a bad idea. I took that Judy one just because I felt so confident in it, and the injuries just get you every time.
Yeah.
I think there's actually money to be made on going and taking everyone's unders. And just all the guys who get hurt, you're going to win on.
You're going to win.
Yep.
And everyone gets hurt.
Yep. It's true. It's very true. And speaking of everyone getting hurt, a surprise injury coming out today. Graham Glasgow is still in New Jersey, guys. Yesterday, about midway through the second quarter, he started experiencing some irregular heartbeats, which he said he's never had before. So he finished the rest of the game for the most part. Netani Muti came in and played 3 snaps for him, then left the stadium in an ambulance after. But it seems like he's doing okay right now, but just with an irregular heartbeat on top of just so many question marks from Vic about what's going on right now, and Graham not saying he put out a little statement on Twitter and it did not say like I'm focused on playing this week or anything. I think he could be out for a while, just with how weird this is.
Yeah, what a scary thing.
Yeah.
You never want to mess with this stuff. And Tim's shaking his head over there, I think, for the same reason as I am. Why did he play the rest of the game?
No.
They're just linemen, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like,
They're crazy.
they're just like better human beings than everyone else.
Yeah,
Like they are. They're just like they don't care about themselves as much as everyone else on planet Earth. Like if you revamp politics to just offensive and defensive linemen, you'd have a real shot at this thing.
It sounds
They're just
like
awesome.
it sounds like they protected you. For
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you're talking about guys that are like, you know what, my heart's kind of giving me issues here, but I'm gonna go ahead and finish.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's just not normal.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm just glad everything ended up being okay.
Thank
Yeah,
God.
he's supposed to be back in Denver tomorrow.
And thankfully
Yeah.
for the Broncos, same thing we just said about the wide receivers. They have depth here. Netani Muti can come in. He's obviously going to be more raw than Graham Glasgow, but he is I think he's a special talent. And I think he might even he'll make the highlight reel next week if he plays.
He will. I mean, just an extremely strong guy.
Yeah.
And a
A
guy
beast.
that has it going on up top too. So I don't think you're going to miss him in protection issues or anything.
Well, Zach, obviously we aren't going to fully transition to this Jacksonville game until later in the week. But since we have Tim here, I just want to talk about, I don't know if you saw anything from them yesterday. Just how do you think the Broncos will do, and how do you think they should attack them?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to do great. I mean, obviously, if the Texans beat them,
But
if the Texans
the Texans
beat Jacksonville,
blew 'em out.
and then we go and lose to them, that's going to be concerning. I think where people need to ease their expectations isn't even on offense; it's going to be on defense, because I think a lot of people are expecting, hey, the Texans defense shut them down, so now we're going to go in there and shut them down. And I think you're going to be surprised at how rapid the learning curve is for these quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round. Ooh. Like Trevor, I don't think is going to make the same egregious mistakes. I think he's now got his first week of the speed underneath him. I think they're going to script it a little bit better. You know, like a lot of people don't like Schottenheimer as a play caller. I think he's great. Obviously, he's the guy who signed me after the draft, so I'm biased into anything he does. But I do think they'll script it a little bit better. I think they'll be highly aware of the Broncos' pass rush and secondary, and they'll, you know, say, okay, here's how we're going to try to attack them. I think you're going to see, and I can't pronounce his name, but the kid who played at CU,
Laviska Shenault.
Yeah. I think you're going to see him line up outside a lot. And I think they're going to throw some one-on-ones to him, because they didn't do that this week, and that's something you just have to do. If you have that kid, he is the only kid that I've ever seen play college football and think to myself, like, he's just the best player on the field.
Every
and
time.
I don't really feel that different when I watch him play in the NFL. I'm like,
he's a freak.
He just, and it's nothing like, oh, well, here's this trait that makes him special. It's just like, I don't know how he does it, but it just seems like he breaks like 7 tackles.
Yeah, did you see? Yeah, you saw the highlight in the preseason where he's just dragging dudes.
Like that just to me is his game. So I think you'll see him. They'll try to get him some matchups that'll give the Broncos some fits. So a lot of fans I think, okay, well now we're just gonna roll, because we're gonna roll Trevor Lawrence and we're gonna roll Zach Wilson. And I think watching both those guys, the learning curve is gonna be expedited, and there was still flash plays.
Oh yeah,
like what Daniel Jones couldn't do against the Broncos, both of these guys can do in terms of extending the play and not fumbling, or extending the play and then throwing in scramble drill. And I think Zach Wilson was, let's be honest, 3 receiver catches away from like them potentially beating the Panthers. And the Panthers defense pretty darn good. So I think I just don't want Broncos fans to think, oh, okay, we got 2 rookies, we're good. Because those are the guys that I think are going to look drastically different each week. Offensively, though, I think you're going to see more of the same. I think you're going to see heavy personnel forcing them in a single high. You know, if they kick it back into 2, they're going to run the ball. But if they force them in a single high, you're just going to see the exact same game plan that you had against the Giants. And you're going to see that until you get to more of these quarters-based teams that use their safeties to run read instead of putting them in the box.
What I will say, though, on the other side of that is neither of those 2 quarterbacks saw a guy like Justin Simmons this last week.
100%.
Or a guy even
Vaughn.
like Kyle Fuller or Von Miller or maybe even Pat Surtain. So while their learning curve is definitely going to be quick, especially for a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who's just insanely talented, it also gets tougher for him this week in terms of the players he's going to be playing against.
I think the worst thing that happened to the Broncos defense, if I can just give one opinion, is the offsides call that early in the game, because every single offensive coordinator, like what you watch first means more, right? It's the same thing with like first impressions, right?
Right.
But what you watch first means more, and then every single OC from here on out is going to watch the offside shot play. So now you know what they're saying on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday is, hey, we got to go on two.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's going to to me, it was one of those things that offsides happen. But for it to happen on the first series then just puts every offensive coordinator in the mindset of, oh, here we go.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the same thing if you struggle against cover 0 early in the season. Like, I guarantee, like, I'd be willing to bet this on DraftKings, that you won't see another snap of cover 0 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after Brady checked to the wide delay and threw the touchdown to Gronk. You won't see another team do it. Because now every D coordinator is like, oh, can't go 0.
Yeah,
like
right.
you just, it means more. So I think that's the one thing that the Broncos pass rush needs to be aware of is now teams are going to hard count you to death until you go a clean game, which they very well could do this week, and then it's all over. But that's something that I think Trevor Lawrence is going to do too, is I think he's going to try to double cadence him. That's the thing that you would have to do against a veteran like Simmons anyways, is because you can, not that he'll get out of position, but you can get him to tip his hand if you give him the exact look, and if you pair it with motion, now you've really got something. So I think that's what the Jags will try to do to us. Again, how effective can it be in terms of the personnel that they just have is always, my son is playing 4-year-old flag football. We're playing in a 6-year-old division. I told my wife, hey, X's and O's don't mean as much Jimmy's and Joe's. We got rolled, right? Because 4 and 6, big difference. So that could be the Jag situation here.
So then really quick, Tim, I have to ask, who's going to be more difficult for the Broncos and poses a bigger threat of upsetting them? Is it the Jets with Zach Wilson, or is it the Jags?
I think it's Zach Wilson. I think the Jags are, I don't want to say so limited because they're still NFL players, but talent-wise are more limited. And I think Zach is at his best right now in the NFL. Trevor's going to be at his best when he can get to Andrew Luck form, which is pre-snap diagnosis, right? Zach Wilson's at his best when he's playing like Russell Wilson. And the nice thing as a quarterback is if you play more like Russell Wilson, that happens quicker, right? Because backyard football or playground football happens way sooner for a rookie quarterback than understanding what the heck a defense is giving to you. So I do think Zach Wilson presents the bigger challenge for the Broncos defense than Trevor does this week.
Yep.
Going to be really interesting. At least they get that one at home. If he does pose the bigger threat, that'll be a insane crowd. Vic Fangio, he's already looking forward to it.
Mr. One game at a time.
One game at a time. He's already like, hey, if we go win next week, we're going to have an insane crowd at home when we get there. And he's right. So cannot wait for that. Tim, we really, really appreciate all the insights. We're going to get to the podcast side of things where we'll answer all of your questions. Kale, is there anything we need to get to here? No super chats. That's on you guys. But we will get to all of the chats from our members here in a second. Again, Tim, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys on the podcast side.